Hey YouTube and Belbrab, and this is my Stride build of Deletors. It is a different deck than my other Deletor deck, so that does mean that I have two Deletor decks, because maybe I'm cool like that, I don't know. Compared to my other Deletor deck, it is much more aggressive, has an actually really good early game, and it can pretty frequently end games the moment it hits grade 3. It's also the deck that I had taken to locals where I ended up going 2-1 out of the 3 rounds because short rounds are a thing. Short tournament's a thing. I can English. So the matchups were against Jewel Knights, and for some reason I have this uncanny ability to have beaten Jewel Knights because I've now beaten both Jewel Knight decks that I've played against. Yay. Second round was against Dark Irregulars, which was I think like an Ammon reverse deck or something. I apologize, but I didn't know. It was Dark Irregulars, and it was like reverse ammo, and that's all I know. And I lost 1-2 in that round, and then the last match was against my friend's Angel Feathers, and that did not end well for her. I beat her 2-0, so yeah. So that's about everything, so I'm gonna get to the deck. So the starter is, once again, we are back to Egorg. Because in terms of the grade 3s in this deck, he is much more useful than Lucci because you're not essentially relying on Greyon this time. You're much more happier to go for Kaios. And Egorg is much more useful with Kaios because he'll unflip one of the 2 damage that you counterblasted, and he'll get you back one of the cards that you ended up discarding, you know, by drawing a card, not pulling it back from the drop zone. So he's my preferred starter over Lucci because he does more for how this deck needs to play. So, I think I'm going to actually start with the grade 3s this time around. So, speaking of Kaios, probably the very best grade 3 that you want to get to, mainly because that grade 3 turn is particularly devastating. So, when you ride him, you counterblast 2, discard 2 cards, delete your opponent's Vanguard, and then lock 2 of your opponent's units. Which is extremely useful, and it also is during the ride phase, so you're able to stride if your opponent's on grade 3, and stride plus delete is absolutely ridiculous. So he's super good in that sense. But yeah, this is why Egorg is useful, because you draw a card which replaces one of the cards that you discarded, and then you unflip one of the damage that you counterblasted, which is super useful. The bright side is that this deck's not overly counterblast heavy, except for the grade 3, so you actually have a lot of counterblast available when you do your things. I ended up putting this guy up to 3 from 2, and I cut a Kaios the day of the tournament because I was picturing myself running into a situation where I drew into multiple copies of Kaios, and I only had played one, or I was only playing one Egorg at the time because I only had one. I managed to get a second one in the same day, but yeah. So this guy is just really good for having a really efficient counterblast cost, as well as still getting the delete effect off. I mean, he doesn't get in the 10k like Ox's, but I find Ox's effect to be a little too pricey. So just in terms of like sustainability, I find Greyon is the best, one of the best grade 3s just to have in your Vanguard circle during the long term if you're not doing like stride plays. And then I was playing 2 copies of Zaele, which thankfully, honestly, I didn't draw into when I had no other grade 3s, because I actually lost a game I've actually lost games when I saw only Zaele. So yeah, I'm debating on cutting him, but I keep picturing myself running into a scenario where I actually need to recycle triggers or units, so that's kind of the only reason why I'm keeping him in the deck, is because I'm worried that I might run into a situation where I need to pull back heals or something. So yeah, grade 3 lineup is really, really solid. I'm pretty happy with it. And moving to the grade 2s. So grade 2's big difference from the other Deletor deck is I'm running 4 12k attackers. I cut Zaele, I don't remember how his name is pronounced, but I cut him and 1 copy of Elba and Elro for 4 of him. The reason why I put 4 of them in is because of the mentality of it increases the aggression of your early game. So you're able to swing for large columns, which will either force out guard or will force your opponent to take extra damage early on. I mean, if they hit heal triggers, then you just go and cry silently to yourself, but that's not important. So, basically, the other Deletor build that I have is very, very passive in the early game. So that usually means that your opponent has the ability to either attempt to rush you, or they can just sit back accumulating cards and only end up having to worry about taking 1 to 2 damage. Plus, in addition, the fact that the other build doesn't play very good early game also means that if you hit your stand triggers too early, they can often be dead. The bright side about this is that you've got your 12k and I also have 10k attackers, so you're swinging for large numbers nice and early, and then if you end up hitting stand triggers, they're standing back up and further increasing the amount of damage that you're going to be dealing that turn. And once your opponent's at like 3 to 4 damage, depending on how big their hand size is, the moment you make your grade 3 push, that can very likely be the end of the game right there and then. So this just increases the likelihood that they will be losing by the time you hit grade 3, which is very important. And in addition, it allows you to attempt to make some kind of a grade 2 game, although not as strong as some other decks, but still you can swing for large numbers, so that's okay. So, playing 2 Elro, 3 Elba, just enough to be able to consistently see both. 3 Elba, he Superior Calls the Elro from the deck, and then the Elro will unflip because your opponent's forced to Superior Call. I still really like the way this combination unflips damage, even if it does get your opponent a card off the top of their deck, which for some crazy reason tends to always be heal triggers when I play against my opponent. I just bumped the table twice. But that's not important. So, yeah, it tends to be heal triggers, which is pretty hilarious. And I find this unflip to be the easiest way, much better than Jail. Jail's good at removing guards, and he's super easy to guard, which makes him not very practical, versus this is a guaranteed unflip, so that's kind of why I'm still liking this combo. And then last grade 2 is 2 copies of Legion Mate. You don't need 4 because it doesn't really do much. You barely Legion. I mean, you can get some locks off of him, and I've sometimes misplayed that where I've had a Gale in hand and then I'm like, oh, maybe should have locked something in the back row instead of 2 front rows. But, you know, kind of happens like that, which is not the end of the world. He still has some use, but he's not as useful as I used to think he was. So, that's all the grade 2s. Grade 1s, 4 PGs, because death is not good. And there's lots of bullshit that swings for high numbers, so you want to just say no. That's my best explanation for perfect cards, so just play 4, guys. We're in a Stride format. Or we're in a format where if you're playing something like this and someone strides, you're going to cry if you don't have a perfect card. 4 Drown fixes bad hands if you have bad hands, but, you know, if your hands aren't bad and you just end up having, you know, if you end up like drive checking your draw trigger, then you can just like pitch him and draw even more cards and feel really good about yourself. So he increases the amount of cards you have in the early game, he fixes bad hands, and he can get your combo pieces quicker. So why are you not playing 4 if you're not playing 4? It's pretty good, and he's a good booster. 7k is pretty strong. Then I'm playing 3 Guitario, which is your 10k attacker, so that can potentially mean that you're able to potentially start swinging for huge numbers as soon as grade 1. Plus, he's also a decent starter if he can't ride anything else. So, starter, decent grade 1. You know what I mean. If he can't ride anything else. And he's 7k booster, so good combination for 19 columns with Elba or Elro and Egot. And I know that Elba swings for 18 with him, but whatever. And then I'm playing 3 copies of the Stride Enabler because Destiny Dealer allows you to not have to pitch large amounts of cards to Stride on the turn that you use Kaios' effect. So yeah, that's kind of good because you're only losing like 2 cards because you're getting 1 back from Egorg. So yeah. And I was playing 4 initially, but I think I cut 1 for another copy of the 10k attacker when I was only at like, I don't remember. But the other issue is you don't want to see this guy too much. In addition to you do want to see this guy, you don't want to see him early game because he does absolutely nothing and he's not a deleter. So you don't get most of your deleter skills off if he's Vanguard. And I don't know why you'd ever want him as Vanguard, but you know, shit like that happens. But at the same time, you want to see him right when you're about to hit grade 3 because then you get to make your opponent feel bad after you do Kaios plus Stride. So yeah, and the Kaios plus Stride play is like just mean. I don't think I have many friends because of it. Actually, I've got tons of friends, but that's not important. Triggers are 4 heals, 4 Jiva. I'm playing Rainbow Build because, as I had said in the previous video, you don't care if you get stand triggers or crit triggers. I mean, you care if you get stand triggers earlier on, but with this deck, you don't so much anymore because you just restand your 12k attackers. 4 stands. I'm going to be cutting him for more eddies. I just haven't got the eddies yet, so sad face. But, you know, that's fine. I can make it work. And then 4 draws, which is like the very first target you always pick with Drown. So yeah, Rainbow build works absolutely fantastically in Deletors. Stride deck is 2 maximum Seal Dragons because budget player, sort of. Not really, but whatever. Because I can't find Big Crunch Dragon is probably the main reason why. Excuse me. 2 Judgment Messiah, he's actually not too bad for your Kaios push, because if he hits, you lock an additional unit. I mean, he's probably going to force out Perfect Guards, which I'm perfectly fine with, because that means there's 1 less Perfect Guard when I do more delete plays. So whatever. And the triple drive, the triple drive just means you're going to hit, you're going to hit more triggers, which means that you could be standing columns again, which is nuts. In the tournament, I played 1 Egorg, but during the tournament, I found a 2nd Egorg. So now I'm playing 2 Egorgs, because you should probably be playing the largest amount of this guy possible, because he's kind of like the best G unit in the deck. Because after you're done your Kaios push, you just keep striding Egorg until you win, hopefully. I mean, if you don't win, then you feel kind of bad, but, you know, if you do win, that's good. And then random Madu, because I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's just, he's just there. I just threw him in there and never put him away. So, yeah. But ideally, what I'm going to probably do is I want to get 4 of him. Judgment Messiah, I actually don't mind. He's a pretty good pressure unit, so probably will keep him in. I'm thinking maybe the end result of the deck will probably be 2 Judgment Messiah, 4 Egorgs, and then 2 Big Crunch Dragon. But I haven't been able to find Big Crunch Dragon, so sad face. But other than that, this deck plays really well, and it's like really fun to play and really mean. But you know, that's that. So yeah, that's the whole deck profile for my Deletors. If you have any questions about the deck, any suggestions you'd like to make, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And I'm Balbarab, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.